So, over the years, Asian movies have progressed and gained more and more popularity within the media. Movies such as Parasite, Crazy Rich Asians, and Shang-Chi have become global hits while also breaking box office records. Not only that, society has come to know more Asian Americans in film. Household names such as Jackie Chan, Hoyeon Jung, Awkwafina, Brenda Song, Lucy Liu, and of course the ever-loving Bruce Lee, just to name a few. Though, despite the more common Asian American representation broadcasted today, it wasn't always as accepted and was a tabooed topic amongst the film industry. As a Chinese proverb once described, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
예술가지질인데
무슨 펜지를 그린 거죠?
자화상이에요.
On a scale of one, on a scale, on a scale, on a scale of one.
The respectability that you demand in your boarding house, Mrs. Haggerty?
May Wong was an actress during the silent film era in technicolor films. She's one of the most influential Asian American actresses in history, regardless of living through a time where Chinese people were ridiculed and infantilized. May Wong fought for change and advocated for proper representation. She crossed the border and broke the frontier of Asian American representation in the media, giving future Asian American actors and actresses a chance to represent themselves and their culture. 1905, near LA's Chinatown, born Wong Lu-sung, her early fascination with movies would cause her to skip school and go to movie theaters, as well as sneak onto movie sets itself. People noticed her on the sets. May had gotten the nickname of Curious Chinese Child, or CCC. At the early age of 11, May Wong decided she wanted to be a movie star. As living in the 1900s would be, racism was still prevalent in May's childhood. Anna and her sister would be bullied at their local school, causing them to transfer to the Chinese mission school in Chinatown.
They surrounded us. Some of them pulled our hair, which we wore in long braids down our backs. They shoved us off the sidewalk, pushing us this way and that.
They would then on continue to call Anna and her sister derogatory names while publicly harassing them. Even though she was quite happy at her Chinese mission school, she had decided to drop out of school at the age of 14 to pursue acting. In the same year, May's first screen debut had happened. James Wang, a former pastor turned Hollywood scout, helped May get a role of a lantern holder in the 1919 silent film starring Alan Azimova, The Red Lantern. The beginning of her career was not a great one. In fact, her own parents had disapproved of her.
An Oriental child raised in a Chinese home in an American city is apt to have a few peculiarities, I guess, especially when she turns out to be a motion picture actress. My parents nearly had a fit when I went into pictures.
No one makes Chinese films. You're a Chinese girl, and they won't need you.
They're used to it now and don't object any longer, but it wasn't an easy thing to overcome their prejudice.
Despite the rocky beginning of her career, May Wong would continue to star in almost 60 films during her lifetime. Though, the problems would still continue for the entirety of her career. May Wong landed one of her very few lead romance roles in The Toll of the Sea, a retelling of a Madame Butterfly set in China. Even though May Wong had tried out for many Asian characters, she was still casted as a supporting role. While it's more unlikely today, during Anna's time, it was highly common to see many Asian roles played by non-Asian actors.
Very fortunate. Culture brought to us. Not have to leave home for it.
More often than not, Anna had competed for Asian roles with other non-Asian actors.
On the other hand, there seems little for me in Hollywood, because rather than real Chinese, Producers here prefer Hungarians, Mexicans, or American Indians for Chinese roles.
She had said later in a newspaper published in 1936. Anime was aware of her quote-unquote Chineseness had set her apart from Hollywood. It was a double-edged sword, and she also knew that. On one hand, many people had only casted her within two realms of stereotypical roles, butterflies and dragon ladies, while on the other hand, it was the reason people had sought her out. By 1924, May Wong had become an unlikely sensation and an international stardom by playing a role of a Mongol slave in Douglas Fairbanks' blockbuster movie The Thief of Baghdad. More and more, Hollywood had started to become more aware of May Wong and her abilities. Though she had played mostly dragon ladies or butterflies, Wong had a fairly large following. Asian Americans were glad to see an Asian on screen, while white people were intrigued to see an exotic Oriental. Anna had started to gain traction into her career into the start of the 20s and so forth. By the 20s and 30s, May Wong was considered as one of the top fashion icons. She was one of the first people to embrace the flapper look. In 1934, the Mayfair Mannequin Society of New York voted her the world's best dressed woman. Regardless of international stardom, she was still restricted from doing things. The biggest restriction and trouble for her were the anti-miscegenation laws in place. In other words, the media explicitly forbids films to show interracial couples partaking in scenes that showed overly sensual scenes, such as kissing scenes. March 1928. To get away from prejudice and frustrated by stereotypical supporting roles she had to play in Hollywood, May Wong had moved over to Europe and left Hollywood. Fortunately enough, it had worked in her favor as she was featured in films in the early sound era, such as Daughter of the Dragon in 1931, Java Head in 1934, Daughter of Shanghai in 1937, and a couple of her most notable films, Joseph von Sternberg's Shanghai Express in 1931 and Piccadilly from 1929. Anna moved so she, like others before her, could find her limelight. Her goal was to find roles that did not cast her as a dragon lady or exotic Asian temptress. Anna also chose to refuse roles that had casted her as a main love interest as anti-miscegenation laws were still in place.
Why is it that the screen Chinese is nearly always the villain of the piece, and so cool, like a villain, murderous, treacherous, a snake in the grass? We are not like that.
During her time in Europe, she became widely adored by European and American fans, gaining success in Germany, France, and England. She had appeared in covers of magazines and interacted with other American artists living abroad. In the late 30s, she had started multiple B-tier movies for Paramount that depicted Chinese people and Chinese Americans in a positive light. But it wasn't all amazing. The biggest setback of her career was in 1935, when Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer refused to consider her of the leading role of a Chinese character, Olan, of the movie reproduction of The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck, considered one of the most groundbreaking literary books for Asian Americans during her time. Instead, MGM had casted a yellow-face actor. In the early 50s, May Wong had started her television show, The Gallery of Madame Lu Song, the first ever show starring an Asian lead. Her plans of returning to film had an abrupt ending after she had died in 1961, at the age of 56. A year before her death, May Wong became the first ever Asian American to receive a Hollywood Walk of Fame star. And alongside of one of her biggest achievements, she had recently been a part of the new U.S. Mint's American Women Quarters program. But her biggest achievement itself is creating a historical difference amongst the lives of past and future Asian Americans in film. She had challenged the media's conventional thinking, striving to push past the restrictive boundaries of Hollywood, remaking it into what we know of it today. May Wong, born Wong Lu Song, was the first ever Asian American in Hollywood, though she is certainly not the last.